Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Jason with Upshifting Adventures, and thanks so much for tuning into this video. I really appreciate it. So I just got back from a trip out west with a good friend of mine, Renee, where we took our Husqvarna 701s, and we were fortunate enough to get the full gambit of riding experience out there. Just about everything you could imagine. We got snow, we got mud, we got sand, we got dirt, we had highway miles, and then we got all of that in the rain as well, tons of rain. It was quite an experience. Now, while we both had Husky 701s, that is about where the similarities end. My bike here is a 2022 that's been heavily modified with a ton of upgrades. And Renee was on a 2023 that was pretty much a bone stock bike. Now, since I've already spent all the money on the upgrades and all that other stuff and the power adders for this bike, we thought it was a great opportunity to compare and contrast the difference between the two bikes, one being very modified, one being bone stock, and then decide what upgrades were really necessary, what stuff I did to my bike was money well spent, and then some of it, maybe I just threw my money away on, right? So what we did is we went out there, we rode the hell out of these bikes, and then we came up with a list of what first upgrades we would do to a stock 701 to make it a truly great dual sport bike, and which ones maybe didn't really add anything to the bike, or maybe you want to hold off till later to invest in that upgrade or what have you. So if you have a 701 and you want to know, what you could possibly be looking at as far as what's going to make this bike really good for the first steps, and even if you don't have a 701, a lot of this stuff is really kind of general to all bikes, then this is the video for you. Stick around, we'll talk about it, and I'll give you a list of the 7 most important upgrades that you can do right now to your Husky 701 to make it a true ripper. Okay, so first off, let's talk about the two bikes. Renee's 701, like I said, was pretty much a bone stock bike. He has a set of 1.5-inch bar risers, and he has a set of Barkbuster handguards on the bike, and then we installed a Perun Moto tail rack to mount the Reckless 80 on before we left. Other than that, complete bone stock bike, all right? Now, my Husky here, we'll just start from the front, go to the back, top to bottom. You can see here I have a set of double take adjustable mirrors. I have the Sicra handguards on here. I'm running a set of BRP billet aluminum handlebar clamps, and I have a 3/4 inch set of risers on my bars as well. Actually, we'll stay here with the shocks. I have had my shocks resprung and revalved for my liking, so that is another improvement that I've made to the bike. I replaced the factory seat with a Seat Concepts wide and tall seat. I have a Van Esch billet aluminum fuel filler gas cap and a replacement fuel filler. On the front here, I have a set of Outback MotorTech crash guards. I have a Tecmo titanium head pipe with an Aero slip-on exhaust. On the bottom end of the bike, I have a billet aluminum shifter, brake pedal, and some Van Esch wide billet aluminum foot pegs. And I have an overmolded, a larger, a better skid plate on the bike. Moving to the back of the bike, I have a 48 tooth Dirt Tricks rear sprocket, and it is a really, really super light sprocket, so less rotational mass, better starts, better stops. A DID gold chain and a super light countershaft sprocket on the bike, stock size, okay? Also, I have under the seat here, I have a Rottweiler Performance air intake. I have the Rottweiler Performance secondary air system and evaporative canister delete. And I am running a Power Commander 6 with the Rottweiler Performance Tune and the Dyno Auto Tune. So as you can see, this bike is very heavily modified. Renee's bike, we weighed the bikes before we left. Renee's stock 701 weighed in at 355 pounds, which is just about what the manufacturer claims the wet weight is. My bike weighed in at 339 pounds. So we at least know that all the money I've spent has given me a 16-pound weight reduction. So she went on a little bit of a weight loss program, which always helps. And Renee on his bike is running the Motaz Tractionator Adventure tires while I am running the Dunlop 606s. All right, without further ado, let's get into the list of the 7 most important upgrades you can make to a bone stock 701. And we put these in order of importance as we saw them as we were out there on the ride. So Renee is new to the 701. He just got the bike, has really no seat time on it at all. And the first thing he started to mention when we were out riding was that the bike really lacked low end, which of course any owner of an LC4 motor knows that that is exactly the complaint that everybody has, is that there's really, the bike does not really come alive until it hits the mid-range of that RPM band, right? And it kicks into the power band. So we'd be riding some sandy dirt, come around a sharp corner and have to climb a steep hill. He'd let out the clutch and felt like the bike was bogging down on him and wanted to die. But you know, as you know, it kind of tractors along, and then once it hits that power band, it wanted to take off and run, and he felt like he was out of control on the bike all the time. So the solution to that, in our opinion, is to get a larger rear sprocket, okay? So the factory sprocket is a 46 tooth. I'm running a 48 tooth on mine, and I have zero problem with that low end bog that most of these 701s have when they're factory stock bikes, okay? Again, like I said, I'm running a Dirt Tricks. They're all pretty good. I really like the Dirt Tricks sprocket because it is so light and has so much or so little rotational mass. But basically what we're saying is get yourself a 48 tooth. That's a 2 tooth bigger sprocket in the rear. Yeah, you'll have to invest in a new chain, but you know, that's all right. Get a better chain as well. So that is our first suggestion for upgrading the 701. The second on the list is a new exhaust. If you put a new exhaust on the bike, not only is it going to sound way cooler, of course, and that's always a consideration, right? But you're also going to allow the bike to flow air a little bit better and increase the performance of the motor. And you're going to lose, on the average, about 10 pounds by replacing the factory piece, okay? Now, losing that 10 pounds hanging off the left side of this bike is going to give you better handling ability too when you're trying to walk it through some you know, gnarly rocks, stuff like that. And even when you're going fast over sand and whatnot, you're going to have better ability to move that bike around in the sand without that big clunky exhaust hanging off the left side. The other thing was, as we were riding, he was telling me that, you know, he felt that he was hearing mostly the engine while riding, right? Like the tappets clicking on the valves, mostly motor noise. Couldn't really hear the exhaust because the factory piece is so quiet. What that caused was that, especially at the low RPMs when we were going up hills or going around technical sections, is he wasn't really sure what range of RPM he was even in the bike, you know, even in first gear. So by putting an aftermarket exhaust, you're going to get that note in your ear that tells you where your bike is revving at, and that's going to help a lot too when you're trying to decide, do I need to shift? Do I need to, you know, maybe feather the clutch a little bit and raise those RPMs? So number 2, get a new exhaust. Okay, third on the list is foot pegs. Odd as that might sound, the foot pegs that come on the 701 are really good dirt bike foot pegs. They're a little bit wider than most, you know, some of the dirt bikes that I've ridden in the past, but they are still just dirt bike pegs, right? They're metal. They have, you know, really tall spikes on them, but they're also very thin for a bike that's this big. So Renee felt the entire time that he had a hard time working over the top of the bike, controlling it with his feet. He felt that he couldn't find the brake pedal all the time or the shift lever. He had to move around quite a bit. He just never felt comfortable on the foot pegs. Now I'm running a set of Van Esch billet aluminum foot pegs. They're extra wide, they're a little bit taller, and they have a ton of adjustable cleats on them. You can give as much or as little traction for your feet as you would like. I really like them a lot. I think they're bitchin'. I don't think they're much of a weight savings, but they are a good piece of equipment, and that's why we say number 3 on the list should be replace those foot pegs. All right, so moving on down the list to number 4 is a new headlight, okay? I am running a Cyclops plug-and-play LED replacement headlamp, okay? There are other options. You could maybe go with like someone like Denali, putting some lights on the crash bars if you have them, or I'm not sure if Denali makes a replacement headlamp for the 701. I don't believe they do yet, but I'm sure they will. Or, you know, like I did with the Cyclops. We didn't do a whole lot of night riding out there on this trip, but the times when we did run at night, it quickly became apparent that the Cyclops completely outshines, pun intended, the factory headlamp, okay? So that is number 4 on the list. Get some new light on the front of this bike. Number 5 on the list, get rid of the factory gas cap. Not only is it pretty inconvenient, but it's also a really bad design, because I have heard so many stories of guys breaking their key off inside the lock of the gas cap. And that is a very costly mistake, because a replacement key for the Husqvarna is about $120, all right? So, not to mention the fact that if you only have one key on you, you just broke it off inside your gas cap when you're kind of stranded at a gas station now, right? The other thing is, it's a bad design. When you take the filler cap out of the Husky with the factory cap, it allows for a lot of dirt and debris from the ride to fall into the gas tank, which is eventually going to foul up your fuel system, right? So something like this Van Esch system right here has a taller neck and a flush base, right? So with the Husky, with the factory piece, it's all flush. So any dirt that's up here is going to fall in. So this has a taller neck, keeps that dirt from getting in there, and it's just a screw-on piece. Now, you can't lock it. I'm not aware of any locking pieces that are out there for this one just yet, but if there are, if that's something you want to do, it's an option. But again, we're trying to get away from breaking off keys in our filler cap, right? But most importantly is keeping dirt and debris from getting into that gas tank. So that's number 5 on the list. Number 6. In our estimation, number 6, you want to get a better intake system for this bike. So the factory air box is a big, clunky, useless piece of plastic, all right? Not only that, so the throttle body is down here, but your air filter is way up here on the front of the bike, so that entire bunch of air box, you have air swirling in there. It's not an efficient system at all. You can get a replacement air filter element from someone like Twin Air. They're about $80 to $90, I think. It's definitely a better filtration system, but it doesn't solve the problem of this big clunky air box that's on the bike, right? So replacing it with either a Rottweiler Performance like I have, or Raid Garage makes a really nice one too. They use the Twin Air filter for theirs, but you're relocating the filter basically right on top of the throttle body, which gives you instant clean air as soon as you open the throttle, and there's no swirling air inside of the airbox. Plus, you get rid of the airbox, you're saving a little bit of weight, and you're gaining a lot of room right here underneath the seat to put either an auxiliary fuel cell, like a 1-gallon fuel cell, get yourself another 55 miles, or like I got from Rottweiler Performance, a little storage bag that goes in there. I can keep my registration in there, I keep my spare key, I keep some tire inflation stuff and, you know, things like that, whatever you want to put in there, right? So anyway, number 6, get rid of the airbox and get yourself a performance intake for the bike. Coming in last on the list at number 7, and I think this might be a little bit of a subjective point here, but replacing the seat. So when I got my bike, that was one of the first things I did, was get rid of the seat. I didn't like it at all. But during this trip, we spent literally hundreds of miles of highway riding, in the rain, in the dry heat, you name it, we spent it on the highway. And Renee said he didn't really mind the seat too much. Not the most comfortable seat he had, certainly not as comfortable as like his 850 GS, but to him it wasn't all that big of a deal, and he said that would probably be the last of these 7 that he would replace. The other ones are gonna make a much bigger difference in the handling and performance of the bike. For him, the seat wasn't that big of an issue. So once again, number 7, replace the seat. Now, there are 3 other things that we would change as well, but these are more luxury items or maybe down the road if you really want to do it. And those 3 items are the mirrors, skid plate, and maybe add a set of crash bars to the bike. Again, these are 3 things that if you have the time and the money and you want to do it, great additions, but not what we would consider really imperative things to replace right away. Okay. All right, so now talking about my bike specifically, I have a power commander and an auto tune on this bike. And I think with all the other upgrades, with the exhaust, with the bigger sprocket, with the air intake, man, this bike rips. It is so freaking fast. I think I'm probably at the 82 to 84 horsepower range, which is about 7 to 8 horsepower over stock. I'm also 16 pounds lighter, so that's quite an improvement. However, what we found out on the road is that this bike was averaging about 44 miles to the gallon. These are true miles from testing, they're not from the website, right? And Renee on his bone stock 701 was getting 55 miles to the gallon. So my bike, the low fuel light would come on at about 110 miles and I'd get another 25, maybe 30 miles before I ran out of gas, right? So 140 pushing it, have some spare fuel on you though. And whereas Renee could go about 170 miles on his bike. Now, if you're not concerned about fuel usage and you want to spend the money on the Power Commander, I would certainly advise it. But if fuel mileage is of importance to you, then probably want to stay away from those kind of upgrades. Okay, so to kind of recap, the 7 most important mods in order of importance that we think you should make to the 701 are rear sprocket, exhaust, foot pegs, a headlamp, a new gas cap, an air intake system, and a better seat. If you do those things, I think you're going to find that this bike is the ultimate dual sport bike. I love this bike so much. Renee, first time out, loving his as well. No gripes about it other than those things that we can fix. And this bike, if you're even thinking about, should I get a 701, they're kind of expensive. Yeah, they're worth it. If you ask this guy, they are totally worth it. So that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching it. I hope that you enjoyed it, got some good information out of it. If you liked the video, please give me a big thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell so you get notified of any new videos that I put out. And once again, I hope to see you guys all out on the road someday.